you've all have heard for a couple of years now that we're basing our success on the core metrics. What are the simple things this campaign can measure? And then I'll touch quickly on impact a little bit, but let me first get started by saying that, obviously we all know the reasons why we're tracking this stuff. We have to communicate the size and scale of our campaign, demonstrates the credibility, it validates all of our campaigns, validates the global campaign. And so that's why we're doing it. We want to demonstrate that this is more than just a PR gimmick. We want to demonstrate that GEW is having an impact around the world, that you all are having an impact in your countries year-round around the world as well. And I'll skip past that. Okay, so 3 things to remember, and this is something that I've learned from our former colleagues at Enterprise UK, and I don't know if Amisha is in the room or not. I don't see her sitting next to Giuliano, but I can say thanks to Amisha for these 3 bullet points from what I've pulled from a previous presentation of hers. You can't manage what you don't measure, so that's why we're trying to do this. And the monitoring and evaluation is as important as taking part in all of this. And so it's great that we're doing the awareness, but we also want to be able to monitor and to evaluate our performance. And so the metrics is obviously critical to that. Now the last point is kind of, I want to stress a little bit more, is being structured and consistent. And so I know that sometimes we've always talked about, okay, well we're measuring the number of partners that you have, we're measuring the number of activities that you have. Previously we had used the label events, and so that kind of connotates a live face-to-face kind of format as opposed to virtual. And so we've kind of shifted away from using the word events and started talking about activities. That's kind of a broader label that encompasses more things. And so the first thing that I want to do is talk about some of the definitions, so that way we're all clear on what we're reporting back, because you're going to see the host survey, and thank you all for filling out the host survey that we send every year. And I think you've noticed that, we're not really changing these core metrics or the questions that we're tracking. We want to make sure that we've got our baselines and that we're kind of measuring our progress based on that. And so I think that in terms of what you're asking from your partners for your national campaigns, obviously you can pull metrics, or you can pull those questions from the host survey. It won't change. And if you have questions about that, you want to follow up with me directly, fantastic. Use Group Hub, use email. An activity is anything that happens during Global Entrepreneurship Week. It could be a live event, it could be a competition, an essay contest, or some kind of online activity. Now, an online activity is important. It's not just someone's visiting your website, right? We don't want to kind of monitor your web traffic yet. But so if, for example, I was talking to one of the hosts yesterday who was saying that there was a pledge that they had during the week on their website. And so obviously that's something that counts as an activity. And the people that are interacting with that pledge, those are participants. Partners. This is something that I don't think that we're really structured and consistent on. I think that we have the basic concept. We know a partner is some organization that's planning an activity during the week. But there's always been some kind of discussion in terms of how many organizations count. And so the one thing that we've settled on is that there's a primary partner that's leading the implementation of an event. And so one event equals one partner, but one partner doesn't necessarily equal one event, if that makes sense. So we want to make sure that we're tracking the lead partner organizations that are planning events in your campaigns, and then we'll ask separately for kind of co-partner information separately. And then participants is any individual who participates in a GEW activity. Now this is an important part. One participant does not equal one person. So for example, if you attend 5 events during GEW, you're 5 participants. Now I know that there's a big gray area there, and I understand that, and it's just hard to track. It's hard, but as long as we're consistent with our definitions and we're transparent with it, we can, demonstrate the size and scale and explain it. But the biggest problem that we have is that if one country is counting it one way and another country is counting it a different way. So I'm just going to ask you all that you think about it this way. A participant is anyone who takes part in an activity during GEW. And so, it's possible that you've got some small countries with some very big numbers because of the previous comment about live events and online activities. Okay, so that's kind of it for the core metrics. Now, I do want to kind of keep things moving here, and I've got a fairly lengthy web conversation that I have planned, but I do know that for those of you who didn't get enough during yesterday's working lunch, we're doing another web working lunch today, and then we have a breakout session after that. So I'm going to try and keep things pretty tight and pretty quick here. I also have a couple of our newer developers who are going to join me on stage in a second, but before I do, I want to talk briefly just about kind of the other part of metrics, which is the measuring impact. It's the case studies that I talked about yesterday in communications. It's the profiles. It's how do we find out what's happening? What are the stories that are emerging? And there are some really interesting and creative ways to track that and measure that are happening in all your countries. And so I know Jonathan had pointed out, Denmark is one. And I think what we can do in order to save time here is maybe perhaps facilitate a conversation on Group Hub following the GEC where some of you who are actually taking active part in more impactful metrics and measuring that for your campaigns, how you might recommend that others do that. Okay, so for this section, if I could ask Joseph and David to step up to the stage. For those of you who weren't in the working lunch yesterday, these two fine gentlemen are from Slovakia. They're with a firm called Mog Design. They're going to be helping us out with the global website this year. And so the idea behind this quick session is to walk you through a little bit of the vision, what the plans are for the website this year, what we're offering to you this year, and also to engage in a little bit of a discussion in terms of just information, ideas, comments, questions, concerns that can help all of us, quite honestly, understand a little bit better what you want to get out of the site. And then, is my colleague Saeed in the room? Come on up too. So many of you have already met Saeed or at least communicated with him online. He's the poor individual who has had to bear the brunt of the activity uploads with the host dashboard. So, all right. So last year, the structure was this: we had one global site, and then we asked each of you to design, develop, and manage your own country site, as opposed to a page. That's why I corrected Brendan earlier. I don't want to get you in the mindset of thinking that one page on your organization's website is going to be sufficient to kind of run a whole campaign for your country. And so I wanted to get you in the mindset of thinking a developed website. But I also realize it's a big ask for a lot of people, and so what we're planning this year is something that's a little bit different. And for those of you that are techies or webbies, the global site's based off a Drupal platform, and we're looking at a multi-site installation for this year. And so what that means really is that we are handing you the keys to a new website for your campaigns. Now, thank me now, and you can reserve the right to thank me later after you've seen the back end. But think of it this way. Just think of it as a separate website for you. Now, I do want to challenge all of you to utilize this new site. The reason being is the connectivity that it's going to have is going to automate a lot of these processes a lot better. And so, we talk about gaps in communication, we talk about things falling through the cracks, and hopefully, the more that we can automate this as far as activity registration goes on the site, the more those numbers are pulled through and we're accurately and in a timely fashion demonstrating the size and scale of the campaign. So I do want to challenge all of you to use this. However, I will say immediately afterwards that I understand that some of you have invested heavily in the site over the past several years, and so I do understand that if you've got a great site and you want to continue using that, that's fine too. All right, so I covered a lot of that. For those of you that may laugh a little bit, that third bullet, launch date, late summer 2012. What we're looking at is kind of a phased implementation, so a couple of different steps, hopefully. We're going to be defining that soon, but what we'll look at is kind of like, a core set of functionality first. This is something that, a lot of you who are actually in the web and app and software development know quite well. It's an iterative process, but we understand that you don't need your you need your websites a lot sooner than October, November, right? You want to market your campaigns, you want to sign up partners, you want them to register their activities on the website, so that way you know what's going on, because you have the same challenges with your partners that we have with you, is that you're only as good or as smart as what your partners tell you, and we're only as good or as smart as what you tell us. So hopefully if we can automate that process and get it up and running as quickly as possible, it'll benefit us all. Now, in the meantime, what are you guys going to do? A couple different options. For those of you that have fully functioning websites, obviously just keep utilizing those. Use that as your marketing, your primary marketing vehicle. Use that as your primary method of communicating with your partner organizations, and just keep moving forward on that. For those of you who are interested or who don't have a fully functioning site for your GEW campaign, we're offering two kind of band-aid solutions. We've developed a WordPress theme that any of you can install WordPress. It's a really quick, like 3-minute install. I can do it myself personally. You can install it, you install the theme, you click a few buttons, and you have a site that's fully branded, looks just like the global website. It kind of ties us all together in terms of branding, but then it's customizable by you, and you control all the content. You have complete access to the back end. You do whatever you want. The other Band-Aid solution quickly is something called Drupal Gardens. And since we are developing on a Drupal platform, for those of you who don't have experience with the back end of that, Drupal Gardens it's drupalgardens.com. It's a site that offers you a free website. You have drupalgardens.com / your little vanity name there. Saeed is developing kind of an instruction manual in terms of here's 20 steps to take to quickly make a site that looks just like the global site. And that way you can start using that as your national campaign site. You can, again, you control the back end, you control the content. And then once we do have the global site and the country sites, I'd say underneath that. But once we have that structure set and ready for you, you can easily export all of your data from Drupal Gardens and then import it into your new website. So it's convenient from that factor. And we'll go through more of that in detail. Probably I'll ask Saeed to cover that in our breakout session after lunch. These are all the reasons you've heard me say a number of times that's the importance of getting our stuff on the website. The host dashboard, Brendan covered. The country pages he covered as well, which is something that's on the current site